There were two empty chairs at the round table, closest to the dance floor, and they were both Cora's. The brass at the door handle was cool under her fingers. Her shoulder eased. Her pulse softened. The first one belonged to the man who had been her fiancé until November. The second one had been added on principle by a kind sister who had refused to let the seating chart hold the truth in writing for everyone to see. Cora had stopped flinching at the empty chair on her left around the third toast. The one on her right she had been carrying for 6 months in every room she walked into. And tonight, in a ballroom at the Donovan Lansing Hotel on Newbury Street, with her sister married 20 minutes ago and the lights warming into the pale gold the band had been waiting for, the empty chair finally felt almost like furniture. Almost. She pressed her thumbnail into the pad of her opposite forefinger, the small private habit that her mother used to say made her hands look like she was counting beads, and decided that this was, in fact, manageable. Her eyes did not move from the small, dark pattern on the rug. The band on the low stage finished a polite, slow number she did not know. They paused, the way bands do when they are about to step into the part of the night the guests have been waiting for. The lead singer leaned to the pianist. The pianist nodded once, and Cora felt her shoulders go very still, because she recognized the small movement of a piano lid being adjusted half an inch, and a man placing his hands above the keys as though he were the kind of musician who began something gently. The kettle's quiet roar in the next room rose and softened. The first chord landed, and her father's hands were inside it. It was a Bartok lullaby, a small one, played at every wedding she remembered from her childhood because her father, who had been a high school music teacher in a town 2 hours north, had insisted that any wedding worth attending opened its slow set with something a child could fall asleep to. Tessa had been 3 years old when their father first taught her to sit on his knee for this lullaby and pretend to be asleep on the last note. Cora had been 6. She had not heard the piece in 8 years. She had not been able to listen to it after the funeral, and Tessa had stopped asking. And here her sister was, married 20 minutes, standing now at the edge of the parquet with her new husband Daniel and her wedding planner, and a glass of something very pale, looking across the room at Cora with a face that said, "I am sorry. I asked them not to. They did it anyway. I love you. I love you." Cora made a small motion with her hand that meant, "It is fine. Dance, dance." Tessa did not believe her. But Daniel, kind, slow, architect Daniel, who had spent the better part of 2 years being patient with everyone in Cora's family, in the way only a man who genuinely meant his wedding vows could be patient, touched the small of Tessa's back and steered her onto the floor. Tessa went with him, but she went looking back, and Cora pressed her thumbnail harder. She felt her breath settle, low and steady. A faint, sweet smell of paper and silk. The second slow song began. Cora did not move. She had not realized, until the lullaby ended and the band slid into something older and a little plainer, that her shoulders had been climbing toward her ears. She lowered them. She picked up her glass and did not drink. She watched a couple in their 60s step onto the floor and remember each other. She watched a great aunt who had no business dancing dance anyway. She watched her mother, Margaret, school librarian, sensible shoes even at a wedding, talking near the bar to an older man Cora did not know. The kind of talking her mother only did when she had decided to be cheerful as a form of public service. The light moved softly across the wood. And then, from somewhere on the periphery of all that, a man crossed the floor toward her, without seeming to be in a hurry about it. The leather strap of the satchel creaked as she set it down. He was tall, but he did not carry the height the way some tall men do, like a thing they had paid for. He wore a dark suit that had been cut for him, and not for a magazine. His shoes were good. The pocket square was white. He did not look at her until he was already inside the perimeter of her table, and then he stopped a polite distance from her chair and rested his palm flat on the back of the chair her ex-fiancée would not be sitting in, his fingers curving over the wood as though he were testing whether it was steady. "I have been watching you sit out 2 songs," he said. His voice was low and unhurried. There was no flirtation in it, which surprised her. There was something else. A small, careful seriousness. The seriousness of a person who has done a job for a long time and learned that the best way to start a conversation that mattered was to say what you had actually observed. The room held the bright morning quiet of a Sunday. "It was a busy afternoon," Cora said. She did not know why she had answered him in that voice, clipped, professional, the voice she used when a publisher called wanting an estimate. "Would you dance the next one with me?" She had a faint, dry impulse to laugh, the way a person who has stopped expecting things laughs when they are tested. Instead, she said, "No." He absorbed that. He did not flinch and he did not press. He glanced at the empty chair under his hand. "Is this seat yours as well?" "It is empty," she said. "May I sit in it?" She looked up at him properly for the first time. He had the kind of face that did not give anything away on its own, neither closed nor open, neither soft nor sharp. The face of a man who had been required for years to listen carefully to people who were politely upset about a missing reservation or a drafty room. His eyes were grey, or grey-green. She would not be able to decide later when she tried to remember. There was a small white scar at his hairline, the kind a child gets falling off a bicycle. "You can sit," she said. "I will not dance." He pulled the chair out one width and sat down at the angle of polite company, not toward her, not away. He did not introduce himself. She did not ask. She liked, in a way she did not let herself examine, that he had asked her once and only once, that he was now content to be there because he had said he would be. She felt her breath settle, low and steady. "My sister got married 20 minutes ago," she said, into the silence, and then could not believe she had said it. "I noticed," he said. "I was at the door." "You were not invited?" "I was not." He turned the wine glass on the table half an inch with one finger, as though the angle had been bothering him. "I work in the building." "At the hotel," she said. He nodded once. "I did not realize the staff stayed for the dancing." A small, private smile she could see only in the corner of his mouth. "We do not, as a rule. I was finishing a walkthrough." "On a Saturday night?" "My properties get a Saturday night look-over once a quarter," he said, and stopped, as though he had become aware that he had said properties and not property, and wished he had not. "I am sorry I interrupted the lullaby." She kept her face still. "You heard the lullaby?" "I asked the pianist to leave the slow set, as the bride's family had requested it. I did not know which family member had requested what. I am sorry if it was the wrong one." The wrong one. Cora pressed her thumbnail. "It was both of us," she said. "My sister asked. I would not have." He said nothing. He did not lean toward her. He did not look at her in the way that men sometimes looked at women at weddings who were sitting alone. He turned the wineglass back to its original angle. He listened to the band move into the next song, an old jazz standard the great-aunt was now butchering with great enthusiasm. The light moved softly across the wood. After a while he said, very quietly, "I should let you have your table. May I bring you anything from the bar?" "No," she said. "Thank you." He inclined his head a fraction. He stood. He pushed the chair back in carefully. Before he turned away, he looked at her, once, properly, and said, "I am glad you sat out." She did not know what to say to that, and so she said the only true thing she could think of, which was, "So am I." He walked across the floor and disappeared through a small staff door at the back of the room. The lights changed. The band finished the standard. Tessa came over, hot from the dancing, and put her cool hand against Cora's cheek, and asked nothing. Later, on the long ride home in the back of the wedding car with her mother asleep against her shoulder, Cora realized she had not asked the man his name, and he had not given it. And she also realized that the lullaby, the thing she had been afraid of for 8 years, had passed through her without breaking her, and that for the first time in 6 months she had not, for an entire conversation, been the woman whose fiancé had left in November. She had been a woman sitting at a table. She fell asleep against her mother and did not dream. The next morning she had to go back to the hotel because Tessa had left their grandmother's earring in the bathroom of the family suite, and Tessa was on a plane to Maine by 8, and someone had to retrieve it before the room was turned. She pressed her thumbnail to her fingertip. It was a soft press. The Donovan Lansing's lobby at 10 on a Sunday in May was the kind of quiet that had been engineered. The kind of quiet you could only get from a building staffed by people who had decided, years ago, that there were certain hours when no voice should be raised above the level of a polite question. The marble floor caught the daylight from the high windows. A pianist, not the one from the wedding, was playing something small and unobtrusive on the lobby grand. Cora had been in this lobby twice before in her life. Once for her sister's rehearsal dinner 6 weeks ago, and once last night. And both times it had felt like a place that did not quite know she was there. This morning, with her hair pulled back and a thin spring coat over the dress she had worn for the rehearsal, it felt almost like a kind room. A long-faced man at the concierge desk, silver hair, very straight posture, the dark blazer of someone who had once worn another kind of uniform, looked up at her, took her in, and said, "Miss Whitfield." "You remember me," she said, which was probably the wrong thing to say to a man in his job. "I have a respectable memory for the family of a Saturday night bride. The earring?" "The earring." "Mrs. Park telephoned at 7. Housekeeping has been holding the door. Please come this way." He came out from behind the desk and led her toward the elevators. He moved like a man who had decided, decades ago, that he would never again be in a hurry inside a building. The brass name badge on his lapel said, "Henry Carrick." He pressed the call button. She felt her breath settle, low and steady. "There has been some excitement this morning at the back of house," he said, as though offering a small piece of weather. "The freight elevator decided to take itself out of service. I would not normally trouble a guest with this, but if you hear a man swearing genteelly in a stairwell on the way up, please do not assume the hotel is failing." She almost smiled. "Is the man you?" "Not this morning." The elevator arrived. He held the door for her. He turned the key for the 14th floor. He stepped back into the lobby and let her go up alone. And Cora rode in the polite hush of the brass and walnut box and tried to remember what she was doing here, and not why she could still hear, in a part of her ear she had thought safely closed, the first chord of a Bartok lullaby. The 14th floor corridor smelled faintly of fresh-cut hyacinth from the side-table flowers. The housekeeping cart sat by the open door of the family suite, and inside the suite, a woman in a grey uniform was wiping down the bathroom counter with the absent focus of a person whose Sunday had begun 3 hours before sunrise. Cora apologized for interrupting. She crossed to the bathroom. The earring, a small, very old pearl drop that had been Cora and Tessa's grandmother's, the one Tessa had merely cried over the night before, was sitting on the dressing table tray exactly where Tessa had set it, untouched, because housekeeping had been told not to. She set her fingers, lightly, on the cold rim of the cup. "You have saved a wedding morning," Cora said. "It would not be the first," the woman said, and went on wiping. She could smell, faintly, the warm coffee in the next room. Cora put the earring into the small velvet pouch she had brought for it. She closed her bag. She thanked the woman. She stepped out into the corridor and turned toward the elevators. And that was when, around a turn near the service door, she walked directly into a man carrying a clipboard. He did not drop the clipboard. He did not, in fact, react at all in the way most men in a corridor would react. He simply caught her elbow with his free hand. A careful, balanced contact. The contact of a person who had been catching things in hallways for a long time, and steadied her, and then released her, and stepped back the precise width necessary to make her not feel pinned. A soft creak from the leather chair. "I beg your pardon," he said. It was the man from the wedding. He was not in a suit. He wore a dark sweater and dark trousers, and the kind of clean, unobtrusive watch Cora had seen on the wrists of doctors who did not want to look like the kind of doctor who needed an expensive watch. He did not have a tie. His shoes were the same. His face had the same quality of careful seriousness it had carried last night, which now, in a corridor at 10 in the morning, looked less like courtesy and more like a default mode. "Oh," she said. "Hello." "You are still here." "I came back for an earring." "Was it found?" "It was." "Good," he said, gently. He glanced at the clipboard, then up. "You are not... I'm sorry. You are not on my list. Should I be worried?" The clipboard had a list on it of room numbers and small notations beside them. 1408 carpet seam. 1411 second pillow shams. 1416, that was the family suite. Guest returning for personal item. Do not disturb until 11. So they had told the staff she was coming. "I do not think you should be worried," she said. "All right." She looked at the clipboard. She looked at the sweater. She looked at his face. She placed him, in the way one places a piece in a jigsaw puzzle that did not, at first, seem to belong to the puzzle one was working on, but did. The velvet on the chair arm was warm where her palm had been. "You work in the building," she said. It came out a little drier than she had meant. "I do." "You said that last night." "I did." "What is it you actually do here?" He hesitated. It was the smallest hesitation, the kind a person can hear only if they are listening for it. And Cora, who had spent 5 years translating Hungarian poets, for whom a pause between two words was the entire meaning of a line, was listening. His palm rested flat on the doorframe to his left, the way it had rested on the chair back the night before. The brass of the door handle was cool under her fingers. Her hand was steady. Her breath was not. "I look after it," he said. She felt, then, the first small click of something assembling itself somewhere in her chest. A click she did not know yet how to read. The hallway was quiet. The hyacinth smelled like the spring it was. Somewhere a door clicked shut. Somewhere a cart squeaked. He was watching her face the way a man watches the face of a person to whom he is preparing to say a true thing. Her fingers were cold. The table was warm. The housekeeper came out of the suite, saw him, gave him the small, respectful nod that staff gave people for whom they had been instructed to give a small, respectful nod, and went on past with her cart. He did not return the nod. He kept his eyes on Cora. "What is your name?" Cora said. "Liam," he said. He hesitated half a beat, the way a person hesitates when their full name carries information they have decided, in the second before they speak it, not to volunteer in a corridor. He set the clipboard down on a small console table against the wall, as though to remove an object from between them. "I am sorry I let you guess the rest at the wedding. I told the pianist to play the lullaby because Mr. Park asked me to honor the bride's family's request. I should have stayed at the door." "You did stay at the door. You said so." "Until I saw you sit out 2 songs. After that, I did not." The corridor was very quiet. "Why?" she said, which was the only question that mattered. "Because," he said after a careful pause, "you sat at a table for a person who was not coming. And I thought, it sounds ridiculous, in a sweater in a corridor. I thought that the thing you needed was a person who had also walked across that floor, for no reason other than the floor. Not someone who worked there. Just someone." She did not say anything. "Once I had said I work in the building," he said. The rest was about to become a conversation between you and a person whose job it was to be there. I did not want that. I wanted. He took his palm off the doorframe. He flattened it briefly, awkwardly, against his thigh, as though uncertain what to do with it once he had not been resting it on something. I wanted, for a song's length, to be a man who had walked across a floor. The hyacinth, the hush, the Bartok lullaby still on her father's keys 8 years behind her, played by a stranger she had not asked to play it. The room held its warm, careful hush. "I have to go," Cora said. "I know." "Thank you for the earring being where it was." "I did not do that. Henry knew it was there. I sign whatever Henry tells me to sign." She almost laughed. It came out of her in a small, surprised breath through her nose. The small explanation read, in that moment, the way the small explanations of senior staff read in a well-run hotel. A man who had been in the building for years and was trusted enough to be carrying a clipboard through the corridors on a Sunday morning, on first-name terms with the concierge, with a sweater and no tie. A property manager, perhaps. A night manager, perhaps. The kind of man who oversaw the small things one did not see in a place like this. She did not, then, look at the clipboard again. She did not, then, ask what I look after it had meant. She had a flight on a sister to catch up to in her own head, and she did not have spare hands for a man's job description. She set her shoulders. She walked past him down the corridor. He did not follow her. He did not call after her. She heard, very faintly, his palms settle against the doorframe again, as though he had decided to keep the corridor stable until she was out of it. Her pulse was a small, bright thing at her throat. In the elevator going down, she pressed her thumbnail into her finger so hard she left a small purple half-moon, and she did not know whether what she was feeling was the embarrassment of having been seen at her own sister's wedding by a man whose name she still did not entirely have, or something closer to the feeling of finding out, at the end of a long musical phrase one had been listening to with one's eyes closed, that the piece had been written for one's voice. She pressed her thumb softly to the leather of the cover. Henry held the door for her as she crossed the lobby. He said nothing about it. He inclined his head exactly half an inch, as he had inclined it when she had come in, and she went out into the bright Newbury Street morning and walked 4 blocks before she remembered which direction her flat was in. 2 weeks went by, and she did not, in those 2 weeks, walk down Newbury Street. She translated. She delivered a draft of a short Hungarian novel to its US editor. She and Amelia Ose, her business partner of 3 years, who had once been the editor at a small literary magazine that had run Cora's first piece on Adam Kalmar, sat in the front room of their second-floor studio on Charles Street and went over their summer schedule with the kind of patience 2 people who had been working in the same room for 3 years could afford each other. A small dust of sun lay on the table. "The case for taking the Kalmar collection," Amelia said, in the long, asides-embedded sentences she used when she was thinking aloud, "is that he has, at long last, decided, after 15 years of mild contempt for the English-speaking world, that he will let his next book come out in English first. Which is, on the face of it, flattering, and on the underface of it, terrifying. Because we will not, in this office, be allowed to fail at it. The case against it is that the book is 260 pages long, and we have promised the Romanian editor a finished draft of the Bulgarian poems by the end of August. And you, Cora, are not actually 2 people, which is a thing I sometimes have to remind you of." "I am one person," Cora said. "The case for one person doing both," Amelia said, "is that the one person in question is the only translator in North America Adam trusts." She turned the page on her legal pad. "By which I mean, he likes you specifically. He likes you also. He likes me sufficiently. He likes you specifically. You may notice the difference." The studio's small bell rang. Their door was the kind of door that did not get rung without prior arrangement. The studio was on the second floor of a row house, above a small dressmaker's shop, and most of their clients came to them by post or by email. Amelia made a face. She went to the buzzer. Cora kept her place in the manuscript and was unprepared 2 minutes later when the door at the top of the stairs opened and Amelia came back into the front room, and behind her was a tall man in a dark sweater with a flat brown paper-wrapped package under his arm. Cora stood up. "He said he had a delivery," Amelia said, in a register Cora had never heard her use before, which sounded like the register of a person who was about to ask a great many polite questions later and was, for now, withholding all of them. "He said he was prepared to leave it downstairs if it was inconvenient." "Hello," Liam Donovan said to Cora. "Hello," Cora said. He had the package under his arm, the way a man would carry something he did not entirely know how to give. He looked at Amelia and then back at Cora, and Cora, who was not, in fact, going to invent a man for Amelia, said, "Amelia, this is Liam. We met at my sister's wedding." "At the wedding," Amelia said. "He works at the hotel," Cora said. "At the hotel," Amelia said. She looked Liam slowly up and down with the inventory eye of a woman who had once worked at a literary magazine and knew, intimately, what sort of trouble showed up at second-floor studios with parcels. "The case for me making tea," she said, "is that we have no other choice." She went into the back room. Liam set the package on the long table where Cora and Amelia laid out manuscripts. He did not unwrap it. He stood at the table opposite Cora, with his palm resting flat on its surface, the way it had rested on the chair back and the door frame, and waited. His hand rested, flat, on the smooth wood. "You did not have to," Cora said. "I know. I have not been by the hotel. I noticed. You did not need to come here." "I am here," he said, "because I read the Kalmar piece you published in the Massachusetts Review in March, and I want to give you this in person rather than send it. It is for you to keep or to refuse. What is it? Open it." She opened it. Under the brown paper was a thin, much-handled paperback book, the kind of edition that had not been printed since the late 1980s. The cover was faded sage green. The title was in Hungarian. It was the first collection Adam Kalmar had ever published, in 1988, when he was 23. There were 400 copies in the original print run. Cora had seen one once, on a glass shelf at a poetry library in Budapest, and the librarian had not let her hold it. Her eyes did not move from the small, dark pattern on the rug. "How did you get this?" Cora said. "A friend of a man who runs a Hungarian bookshop in Queens. He was very specific about the trade. I'm not going to tell you what it cost me. He told me you would know. He would have known I would know. He said, 'Tell her not to translate from this edition because it has typos.' I have not, of course, the faintest idea what he meant. I asked him to write the line down so I would not get it wrong." He took a folded square of paper out of his pocket and put it on the table next to the book. The handwriting was small, careful, foreign. The line was exactly as he had quoted it. The fire in the small grate had burned to a soft, dark glow. Cora set her hand on the book. She did not pick it up. She felt the small, foolish, dangerous warmth that arrived in a person when somebody who had paid attention to her work in private was suddenly standing in her own room. She pressed her thumbnail into her finger. A sharp, bright square of sun moved across the rug. "Why are you giving me a book?" she said. "Because," he said slowly, "I asked the pianist to play a Bartok lullaby for a bride's family at a wedding that I had not been invited to, and a woman I had never seen before sat out 2 songs at a round table near the dance floor, and I wanted, then, to know what the music had done to her. I did not, of course, know yet, and I did not ask. Later I looked up a name. The name had published, in the Massachusetts Review, an essay on a Hungarian poet I had not heard of. The essay said, in the third paragraph, that the poet wrote about weather as though weather were a verb. I've spent 4 weeks thinking about that sentence. He paused. He looked at the book. I am not very good at this, he said. I do not, as a rule, do anything in my life that does not have a brass plate beside it. I bought you a book. The kettle in the back room clicked off. Amelia, who could be heard in the next room moving cups very deliberately, was giving them more time than the kettle had actually taken. The room held its warm, careful hush. Her fingers were cold. The table was warm. You bought me a book, Cora said. Yes. She picked it up. She opened it to the first poem. It was the one she had first translated, the one that had made her decide, at 23, that she would do this for a living. She read the first line in Hungarian, in the small voice she used when she was reading to herself. The kettle's quiet roar in the next room rose and softened. Thank you, she said. You are welcome. She closed the book. She set it on the table. She set her hand on top of it. I am not very good at this either, she said. I noticed, he said gently. And that was the closest he had come in 20 minutes to making her smile. And she did not then, but she felt the smile assemble itself somewhere in her chest, the way one feels a piece of music waiting in the air before the band begins. A sharp note from the street, then quiet again. Amelia came back in with 3 cups of tea on a tray, as though the whole thing had been planned a week in advance. The room held the bright morning quiet of a Sunday. He stayed for half a cup, no more. He answered Amelia's questions about the studio's lease, and the size of the front room, and the dressmaker downstairs, with the easy honesty of a person who had been answering questions in front rooms for years. He did not, Cora noticed, mention his work. He said he had grown up in Boston. He said he had spent a year in Vienna in his 20s. He said the package had taken 3 phone calls and a Sunday morning trip to Queens. When he stood to leave, he did not, by any small movement of his hand, give Cora the impression that he was waiting for her to invite him back. He thanked Amelia for the tea. He turned to Cora. If I write to you, will you read it? Cora pressed her thumbnail to her fingertip. Yes. He went out through the door at the top of the stairs. They listened to him go down. They heard, faintly, the small bell at the bottom of the stairwell as he opened the street door, the way someone closing a hotel-trained door closes it, with the heel of one hand against the frame so the latch will not clatter. Amelia waited approximately 10 seconds. All right, she said. We are going to drink this tea, and you are going to tell me what a man with a hotel-trained door-closing technique is doing, carrying a 1988 first edition into our front room. I do not know what a hotel-trained door-closing technique is. It is the thing a person learns to do when they are paid not to wake guests. I went to school with 3 boys who had it. Tell me about him. So Cora told her. She told her about the wedding, the 2 empty chairs and the Bartok lullaby, and the man crossing the floor. She told her about the next morning, and the earring, and the corridor, and the clipboard. She told her about not having heard from him for 2 weeks, and about not having walked down Newbury Street in the same 2 weeks. She did not, because she did not entirely know what to make of it herself, tell Amelia what he had said about the Massachusetts Review piece, or the line about